It's the Fantasy Commissioner Show.
Hey, it's the Fantasy Commissioner Show, the show for commissioners by a commissioner. I am Reginald James, the commish. Come join me here on the live feed at rabble.tv. You can also hit me up on Twitter at commish show. And if you feel like it, the mood hits ya, send me an email. The commish show at outlook.com. .com. Hey, happy Friday. It's time for another Fantasy Commissioner Show, the FCS. So how did it go the first week? First week of the NFL, the first week of fantasy action. How did it go for you folks out there? And who is in a panic? Oh my God! Who's in a panic already? You know who you are. And we know people like that too. They're like trading their whole team. They're like trying to get rid. They're like trying to get rid of their whole team. Someone goes down with an injury, Keenan Allen, or someone doesn't perform that well. Yeah, I want to know, should I trade Adrian Peterson for Duke Johnson? What? Your whole season is over. Drama queens. Drama queens. Your season is not over. But if you want to trade Adrian Peterson, I don't want Adrian Peterson, but I would like to have Adrian Peterson. I'll take him. I'm sure there's someone in your league, drama queen, who will be glad to take him off your hands. Yes. By the way, I lost Keenan Allen. He was my top receiver. He was going to be my number one receiver for this season. He was going to sit in that slot until his bye week. Well, that is the idea. The reality of that is no more. So my number one receiver is, who is it? Eric Decker. Who is your number one draft pick? Eric Decker. I'll be okay because I drafted well. My season is not over. No panic ensuing over here. So if you think the Adrian Peterson owner, the Todd Gurley owner, two players who will have better days. Although Gurley has the disadvantage of not having a quarterback who can actually hurt teams, loading the box. See, if those owners are in a panic mode already, see if you can, I don't know, help them out. Help them out with their angst. Make their load a little lighter. We like helping people in that manner. By the way, Bradford, in most leagues, in deeper leagues, Bradford actually might be on someone's roster. It's an upgrade. I don't know. I actually think Sam Bradford is a good Yeah, I didn't say great. I think he's a capable quarterback as long as he can stay healthy. I mean, the biggest knock as far as I'm concerned for Sam Bradford is that, well, it's okay for him to take all that money. They offered it to him. So if someone's going to offer you all that money, take it. But he's one of the players that I think of almost immediately that hasn't quite lived up to the money that he's been paid. And that's not, look, he's still in the league. Someone thinks he's still a viable quarterback, so hey, make that money. Tavon Austin comes to mind too, the most overpriced flanker. Some of you young cats are like, what? What's a flanker? Look it up. He's one of the, he might be the only flanker in the league. but he is like the most overpriced flanker in the history of the NFL. Such hyperbole, I know. But he is. It's insane. And the Rams deserve everything they get. Their coach is not good. He's not a good coach. First of all, they give Tavon Austin all that money. They drafted him in the first round. And what was their deal with that? This isn't college football. At best, Tavon Austin is a punt returner. This is not college football. One of the things I'm going to talk about today is how the NFL is not fantasy football. Well, college football is not the NFL. Every year I have these discussions about, oh man, Johnny Manziel, money, cash money. Oh yeah, did you see he runs all over the place? Man, he's going to run all over those guys in the NFL. Yeah, we saw how that worked out. Quarterbacks can run his butt down. Every Saturday after given Saturday, you'll have one or two players on a team. They're the best. That's it. And they run all over the place and get 500,000 yards of all-purpose yards. And no, that doesn't happen in the NFL. You have guys who are just as good as you on both sides of the ball. Man, I don't know what they're looking at. Sometimes I'm like, guys, I don't know much about scouting, but I've been watching football all my life. So can you pay me to be a scout for your team? I mean, who are these scouts for these teams? I mean, who on that staff thought that Tavon Austin was going to be a number one receiver? They're paying him, and this is his second contract, people. They're paying him number one receiver money. What? On what planet? Earth, I guess. I mean, come on. They showed this stat the other night. 62% of his receptions have come behind the line of scrimmage. That is not, by any definition, a wide receiver. That's a flanker. That's a flanker. They gave him a new contract, and they're paying him number one receiver money again. Man, I don't get it. So, you know how I tell you all the time that as a league commissioner, you have to wear two hats. And it's actually a skill to be able to move back and forth between both realms, between the secret realms of the world of fantasy and the world of reality. Are you a commissioner or are you a player? Which is it? Make a choice. You know, it takes some practice for some folks to not commish. Not commish, not to over commish. That was rule. Tell me, class, what rule was it? I think it was rule number 5. Okay, so we can review. Number 1 is put it in writing, and number 2 is be transparent. No, business before family and friends. And number 3 is be transparent, and number 4 is don't make it personal. And so I believe that would be number 5. 5, everyone. Number 5 is not to overcommish. We talked about that a couple of weeks ago. I wasn't going to look that up. I just tried to remember that as best I could. I think that's it. But we've talked about that. Don't overcommish. Now, there will be times when you will have to act where you're going to have to act against your own self-interest. Unlike the other members of the league, you will have to do things as a commissioner. You will have to make decisions that you might not like as a player. I've talked about that in the past. I talked about that a number of times last year, and I'm about to talk about it again. Case in point. So a couple of nights ago, I'm writing my commish Q&A for fantasypros.com. Fantasypros.com. Go there, check it out. I'm answering a question about whether or not suspended players should be allowed to be placed on IR, in the IR slot. No, that's the short answer. But I'm going to read my response, which you can see, once again, at fantasypros.com. Yes, I'm plugging my column. I am. I'm plugging my own column. I don't have a publicist. I'm going to read my response. And then I'm going to tell you what went down while I was actually preparing the response. Question: should I allow our league to put suspended players on IR? And what did you say? I said, I believe that the IR slot should be used only for injured players. A suspended player is not available to play due to some other reason besides being physically unable to play. Le'Veon Bell, problem child. However, it's up to you. It's up to you. If you run a league on a fully customizable platform, you can set it up so that you can. For example, free Yahoo Fantasy, which isn't fully customizable, only allows you to put players with the designations IR, PUP, or out on IR. They do not allow you to modify this setting. So it comes down to what you want. Or if you put it up for a vote, then it's what your league wants. Before you present the scenario to the league, just make sure it's something you can actually set up. Okay. So I go to Yahoo, and that's the platform that we play on, because I want to look at the language that they use. I was comparing Yahoo with a fully customizable league where you can pretty much create whatever type of scoring or rules you want, right? So last year, it was set up that only IR players with an actual IR designation could be placed in an IR roster spot. That's what Yahoo, that they had that set up. That's the way it was last year. So I have a set of rules that I post. Rule number 1, put it in writing, anything that goes outside the confines of the platform that you're using. So under the injured reserve player heading, I have 1. There will be 1 open IR slot on the roster because that is customizable. So on Yahoo, I can have 0 IR spots, or I could have as many as I want. I chose to have 1 in this league. So this language that I wrote, it's my own. And then we'll move on. I'll explain what else follows afterwards. So number 1, there will be 1 open IR spot on the roster. Owners can add a player to the IR roster spot during the season only if the player has the IR status as designated by Yahoo. So that was my way of saying, look, this is what we're going to do, but we're basically working with the confines of Yahoo. So next is kind of like my for example. Next is the actual text that I copied straight from Yahoo, which reads, the NA not active and PUP physically unable to perform, player status cannot be used in an IR slot. Then I added 2. Players placed in the IR slot cannot be cut. Wait, no, hold on. I can't even read. I'm trying to read my own rules here. Number 2. Players placed in the IR slot can be cut or dropped, but they cannot be traded. So up until this season, we were following the way it was set up at Yahoo. And the only thing that I changed, which is what I say in rule number 1, just put it in writing. The only thing that I changed was the number of IR slots we were going to have and whether or not you could trade those players. So because that was something that I added, I actually wrote it down, and every member of the league has these rules, whether they read them or not. So we're good, right? So I pull up the Yahoo description on using IR with your roster, and this is how they explain it. Now, IR eligibility. Depending on the player's status, they may or may not be eligible for fantasy football's IR position. Players will be made eligible for fantasy football's IR position once they're placed there in real life. Updates to IR eligibility will most likely happen during our nightly system update and display the following morning. Eligible players. Players with one of the following statuses are eligible to be added to your team's IR roster spot. IR, injured reserve, check. Out. What? NPOP. What? Physically unable to perform and out are now added to the list. That's what I say. EGOTS! I say. Not really. Ineligible players. Players with one of the following statuses are considered ineligible for the IR slot. NA. Yeah, check. Probable. Oh, that's new. Okay. Questionable and suspended. Yeah. Oh, no. Wait a minute. So two things immediately go through my mind. One was, Dagnabbit! How did I miss that? I said Dagnabbit. So I go through the what's new list on the main page because I'm like, wait a minute. Man, sure enough, there it is. It's new. They changed it. They went from, if it doesn't say IR, they don't go on IR to, well, you can add IR in ONPUP. Okay. So I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, man, I dropped the ball. I take pride in keeping the league informed. I do. I put in the time so I can just relax as the season progresses, right? And here was the easiest thing not to miss. It's right there on the what's new list. I have no excuses. I can say that I'm busy. I am, but I'm always busy. I'm busy every year. So, for me, there's no excuse that I could actually make. Did I glance at the what's new list? I don't know. I think I did. But I'm the commissioner, so I'm supposed to read it. On top of that, as a player, right? So this is the easiest thing for me not to miss. Now, should the league members check the what's new list every season? Yes, they should. And as I was getting ready to say, that goes for me too as a player. So as a commissioner, I need to read that thing. And as a player, I should read it too. It's in my best interest as a player, and it's in my best interest as a commissioner, just in case something changes, because I'm the one that sets up the rules and, things change. Like, I don't know. This IR eligibility. So I didn't do it as a player. I didn't do it as a commissioner either. That's the biggest gaffe. The commissioner miss. So the second thought that passed through my mind, what was that, you ask? Was the thinking like a fantasy player? Not as a commissioner. The second thought that went through my head was I immediately thought of the Ravens running back Kenneth Dixon, who is injured and who I think has sleeper potential and some very good upside. By the way, that's your official fantasy tip of the day. So I have Dixon on my watch list. So I know he's listed as out, which means I can now put him in the IR slot. Holy cow, yes! That's what I'm thinking. Official second thought in my head. The first one being, dagnabbit, I dropped the ball as a commissioner, you suck. Second thought, holy cow, yes! So, I drop Keenan Allen, I pick up Dixon, and I put him in my IR slot. Wait a minute. I wasn't supposed to do that. Was I? Was I? No, I was not. Why? Because the current rule that I had submitted to the league said that only players with an IR designation can be placed on IR. So now I hear my voice. Rule number 3, be transparent. Ha 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 ha. Oh, man. I've got myself a dilemma, don't I? Now, granted, I'm supposed to be going to bed. I was going to bed. And so I was trying to finish the article so I could submit it to the powers that be so they can post my article so everyone can read it, right? All that good stuff. The Fantasy Commish Q&A, week number 2. And I want to go to bed, but now I'm sitting here looking at this mess because I'm trying to finish my article, but in researching it, I find out that I've dropped the ball. Dagnabbit! But I got myself a dilemma. I can't put Dixon in that IR slot. I can't. It's against the rules. Now, the player in me starts to justify why I can. This is America. I can do whatever I want. Right? Well, I'm thinking if they didn't take the time to check out what was new in the league this year, well, that's too bad. I can't help it if they weren't paying attention. So what do? I pull Dixon. I pull him, and I put him back on the active roster. Why? Because I put the commissioner hat back on. If I kept Dixon in the IR slot, as a player, I was breaking the rules. It didn't matter what Yahoo allowed at this moment. That's not the rule that was put forth for the league. So I couldn't allow Reginald, the player, to use up the IR slot. As a player, it would be to my benefit to put Dixon in the IR slot. It frees up roster space and allows me to put another player in the Keenan Allen spot. As a commissioner, however, I had to contact the league. I used to tell folks every year, the first letter of the season to my league, to check what's new is your responsibility. I did say that. We've been doing this for a long time. Now, I haven't done it in a while, and I don't even know when I stopped, but I did it every year. Check the rules. There might be something different. It's your responsibility. The only thing that I needed to point out to the league was something that I decided to change that we didn't vote on, that I did not hold a vote on, and I decided to change something or modify something. That's my responsibility. But, I was the mom hen or chicken hen or, mother hen. There you go, mother hen or whatever you want to call it. But I was just doing my job. But, I don't believe in holding hands. And like I said, they list something new every year. And sometimes it applies to us and sometimes it doesn't. So why and how it fell from my consciousness, who knows? But I sure didn't mention anything like that this year. Check the rules. I'll do it next year, though. as I check the rules myself, what's new. But Yahoo is great with that. They always do what's new. Here, let us tell you. Now, I don't know. So at this moment, I'm like, dagnabbit. And yes. Well, no, I'm not yesing anymore because I pulled Dixon. I put him back where he belongs and not in the IR slot. Breaking the rules. So I don't know if anyone has noticed or not, but let's say that no one read what was new. And then they see that I have a player with an out designation in the IR slot. They're going to want to know why. And they should, for good reason. Now, if I decided to let the player override the commissioner, if I was just a player, Dixon stays in my IR slot. Period. If I was going to be a sucky commissioner, I would keep Dixon there as well, and then cross my fingers and hope that no one notices. But I'm not just another player, and I'm not a sucky commissioner. So this is what I sent to the league. Letter officially starts now. I don't know how many of you noticed the change. I didn't. So I'm bringing it to your attention just in case you're like me. I just discovered the change because I was answering a question for my commish Q&A column, which was about putting a suspended player on IR. I checked Yahoo's rules just as a point of reference to compare their language compared to a fully customizable league. I was using them as an example. I discovered that they had changed the designations allowed in the IR slot for this season. This is what I found, which is different from last year. The change is also listed on their What's New page. So I'm not going to repeat what I read. I read, what was new, like I did a couple minutes earlier. Okay, then I said, since our current injured reserve settings reflect Yahoo's 2015 settings, but since I noticed that they are now different, I want a league vote on this matter on how to go forward. Here are our two options. 1. A vote to follow our rules as they are written currently for the rest of the 2016 season, which reads, the NA not active and PUP physically unable to perform player status cannot be used in an IR spot, which was their language. Or 2, a vote to adopt the change instituted by Yahoo from this present time going forward for the rest of the 2016 season. If we vote number 1 and stick with the old rule, then we will only be allowed to put a player with the IR tag in the IR slot, even though Yahoo now allows us to do something different. Please keep that in mind. I don't want any misunderstandings if we vote that way, number 1, and then I'm forced to ask people to make roster changes because they forgot. Please send me your choice of 1 or 2 by 11:59 p.m. Thursday. If I get all the votes before the deadline, I'll let you know ASAP. Reginald. And they voted. The majority of the voters chose to adopt the current Yahoo rules or settings. So after I took steps to settle the matter, I got excited because I thought, cool, I'm going to talk about this on the show. So there you have it. Real life moments in action. I followed my own rules, the rules that I suggest that you follow, about being transparent, holding myself to a higher standard, because I think you should. My job as commissioner is to facilitate, to settle disputes if they come up, and then just stay the hell out the way. I'm not supposed to be the one creating the chaos. I'm not supposed to be the one creating the disorder, creating mistrust, because I'm thinking about how I can turn things my way to benefit as a player myself by using the commissioner controls and such. Again, this really wasn't an issue where I was manipulating a rule or a setting to my advantage, but I discovered something that I could try to benefit from as a player, which would have been fine if I wasn't the owner of that bright and shiny commissioner's hat. It's so beautiful. And let me say, people don't read the rules. They just don't. You commissioners know that. You do. You're laughing right now. See Billy over there, he's laughing. He's laughing. He knows. They just don't. You commissioners know that. Lots of people don't read your emails. They should. You know. They should always check the rules, says the guy who didn't check what was new. Yeah, right. They check the rules when something goes down, though, that affects them personally. Then they're like, hey, wait a minute. And then, with the emails, they'll say that you didn't mention something or you didn't talk about something. But you really did mention it in an email. But because they didn't read it in detail or they just skimmed through it, I used to write much more prolifically than I do now. Years ago, eons ago, in a galaxy far, far away, I actually had to produce content on a daily basis. As a writer, posting internet content. And I wrote for neighborhood guides and stuff like that. That was way back then. But even way back then, we learned. We were coached. We were forced. We were forced slapped by rulers and stuff. We were forced by, the powers that be to write in a short and concise manner. And to basically bullet point everything. Because well, that was right around the time when they discovered that the best way to get eyeballs on your content, so the heads that actually contain the aforementioned eyeballs, so they wouldn't explode from too much content. It's too much information. Too much information. This is when the whole, 5 ways to do this, 5 ways to do that, 10 reasons you should watch this, 10 reasons she's leaving your ass. I was there. I was there when all that junk started. I was there. I was there because they learned way back then in the Cro-Magnon era that people don't read. They don't read. And when they read, they don't read well. And their comprehension of the stuff they do read is for shit. Watch your mouth! Yeah, okay. And it's worse now with the texting. This generation they were born with the internet. Born with the internet generation. It's worse. It's just awful. They can't look at each other when they speak. They can't look at you when they speak. They can't even spell well anymore. They think truncated words and language is the proper way to write things. It's just awful. It's awful. But that's another topic for another day. Not on this show. So when I send a letter to my league, I write in that style. So it was last, for those of you who, if you're listening to this for the first time, if you check out last week's podcast, and you should listen to it. If you check it out, I went over, I believe it was last week, I went over a letter that I wrote, and I talked about how I, put things in red text and blue text, because coming right back to, today, what we're talking about right now is I know people don't pay attention and they don't. So I have to make sure that I basically write for the internet when I send the letter out, because no, I don't trust people to read everything. So I have to, I have to do my job. And then once it's done, if they read it, they read it. They don't, they don't. But I will do my best to make it palpable for them. To make it all tasty and yummy for them to digest. So, I have, I have these, it's not really bullet points. I'll just put a dash or something, right? But, but the in the spirit of bullet points, it's full of that. And I have a series of like one sentence and then, a line break and then another single sentence and then a line break. And these single lines, these single sentences will be my most important points. Points that I don't need to get lost in a small paragraph that someone isn't going to take less than 10 seconds to read. It's so taxing on the brain. Seconds. Oh man, what a hindrance to our lives. Oh, My brother and I co-manage in a league with 14 teams and 2 divisions. We finished in a 3-way tie for the last playoff spot last year. And the tiebreaker is head-to-head result. The problem is that the commissioner of the league has a 12-week regular season and a 2-week championship matchup, meaning that not every team faces each other. In our playoff tiebreaker scenario, 2 of the teams involved hadn't played each other. I've asked the commissioner to consider changing the setup, but he hasn't done so, and hasn't even asked the other league members what they think. What's the next best plan of action? Official response starts now. If your commissioner hasn't or won't respond, use your patriotic right to fight the power. Yeah, boy. You ask the others what they think. Offer your ideas or suggestions to the whole league. CC the whole crew. Others might be feeling the same way and join you in wanting change, thereby forcing your commissioner to do something. Head-to-head comparisons work in the real world, but if a fantasy league is set up where some teams aren't going to ever play each other, then the system is already primed to choke on itself. If your league or commissioner wants to stick with the head-to-head tiebreaker, try and suggest that your league does away with having 2 divisions. Then everyone gets to play each other once through 13 regular games. Now you can have your head-to-head tiebreaker and actually be able to apply it. For now, if you keep the divisions, you could just drop head-to-head as a tiebreaker. Make total points the tiebreaker this year. The commissioner can make those changes. It doesn't affect the current state of the league as far as scoring goes, and they won't have to redo the schedule. Next, I would suggest that the league use fractional points. In most cases, that would pretty much take care of everything. It's not impossible, but the odds are fairly low that teams will end up with the same amount of points when this type of scoring is used. You could present to your league the following tiebreakers to consider after total points: longest active winning streak, highest point total in a single game, highest margin of victory in a single game, or total team touchdowns. You could even make a coin flip, the very last tiebreak. I would only do that if you come up with at least 5 tiebreaks before that. Again, total points scored and fractional points pretty much usually ends much nonsense and angst. Now, this was my official response for the column at fantasypros.com. It was edited down so I could get across the main points in a limited amount of space. Now, sometimes I'll respond with an answer. I'm talking about email, and that's the end of it because of the type of answer, the question, right? But this particular question led to an exchange that went maybe 5 exchanges deep, maybe something like that. I had a lot more to say, and the person who actually asked the question, they did too. And I normally don't do this, I've actually never have done this, but I started in on a topic during our conversation that really bugs me, which was part of his dilemma, or their dilemma in my eyes. And I just couldn't spill it out all over Fantasy Pros. I couldn't, just because, it was a nice conversation I had with this dude. So I'll do it here, because I want to get into some things a little more specifically. Let's be specific. And this is pretty much the main point I want to talk about. There are some others, and actually, this might be the gift that keeps on giving. But right now, I want to address this first. every once in a while this will come up and I'll say this, but here we go. Just in case you haven't noticed. Fantasy football is not the NFL. Fantasy football is not the NFL. There, I said it twice. Why? I don't know, because I could. Now, some fantasy players miss this point, or they will willfully ignore this point. It's not the NFL. See, I said it 3 times. Now, they embrace the NFL mimicry. Real football. Yeah, it's real football. Yeah, they'll do that when it suits them. And then when it doesn't, oh well, it's just a game, guys. Because it all depends on how the wind blows. Let's do something because the NFL does it. Or, we don't have to do exactly what the NFL does. We can do whatever we want. This is fantasy football after all. Let's see. Let's go over a couple things here. Real NFL teams, they don't play on their bye week. Duh, some of you say. Right, well, duh. If you want to be like the NFL, then instead of managing a roster, trying to figure out, who to play during a player's bye week, how about you don't play at all? How about you get a week off? You like that? You like that? Most leagues, and for a good reason, don't have team quarterback. We lose points the rest of the game when Brady goes down in the first quarter. We don't continue to get points when Landry comes in. I think that's his name. We don't. Most of us are screwed if we lose a quarterback during the game. Oh, I don't know. That's not like the NFL. They get a quarterback, and they keep scoring points for their team. Oh, us, we in our fantasy leagues, we don't continue to get points, do we? Technical difficulties. We don't. Injured reserve in fantasy football, well, it doesn't count against our cap. Oh, I forgot. That's right. We don't have a cap in fantasy football. Now, in this guy's league, they have it set up that the winner can change a rule the following season. And basically, in his case, and this is not the first time I've heard this. This wasn't new to me. I'm going to say it again for some of you guys who've never heard this before. In this guy's league, they have it set up so that the winner can change a rule the following season. And basically, in his case, the guy who wrote the letter to me, that was about the only way the change from using head-to-head as a tiebreaker, when you might not be able to apply said tiebreaker, that was the only way that the change was going to take place if he won. And then someone was like, well, how about you win just one more game? What the hell? Yes, leagues have all kinds of rules, crazy rules. And frankly, I think just so some commissioners, they'll have these rules just so some commissioners can tell everyone how crazy their league is. Wow, man, your league is crazy. Yeah, I know, right? You know what I'm talking about. Come on. Some leagues have things set up in the true name of just having fun. You know, I heard about this one league, if you come in last, this is a league where they have live drafts together. You know, they have the draft party and all that. Well, the person who comes in last, they have to sit on a pink toilet bowl, on a pink toilet during the draft. Okay, you know. Hey, that's fun. It's all in good fun. People are drinking and drunk. You know, they're drunk and all that, whatnot. You know, so yeah, okay. And then in other leagues, it's like, Hey, well, let's just screw with the rules because we can. Yeah, man. Oh, and by the way, the Denver Broncos, the Super Bowl champions, they didn't get to change the NFL rule of their choice this year. You know why? Because the NFL is not the same as fantasy football. The operative word is fantasy. An NFL team doesn't play doubleheaders either. But some fantasy leagues do. Just in case, new folks to the fantasy world, just in case you don't know what that means, a doubleheader is when you will have to play two teams each week. So your score will be pitted against the score of Team A, and then your score will be pitted against the team of against Team B. So you're playing two other teams each week. Well, the last time I checked, the NFL doesn't do that either. Hey, let's have a doubleheader each week. Yay! Yeah, I actually think that's great if you want to do it. It's great. If you want to do that, great. If you don't want to do that, that's great too. But, yeah, it's a good thing for the Rams that they didn't have to play Seattle right after they played San Francisco. Or even the next day. No doubleheader for them. Darn. People. Yes, it's fun. It's kind of different. You know, it's crazy. I think my dadgon's crazy. Yeah, yet another example of fantasy football. It's not real football. It's not. No double headers in the NFL, but we do it in fantasy. The Super Bowl champions don't get to change the bump rule or the interference rules or what a legal procedure is. No, sorry guys, they don't get to do that. They don't get to do that. Oh. We can have a whole show with these examples. Now back to the letter writer. Part of the argument, he got some brushback. And part of the brushback he got was to the fact that there were three teams that didn't play each other. So the brushback was that, and this is what was said to him, real football doesn't have every team play each other either. No shit, Sherlock. Thanks for playing. You know what he's also told? That the commissioner liked the fact that fantasy mimics the reality. Mimics the reality. No, it doesn't. Not even if you say it while clicking your ruby slippers together. The resistance this guy got, on one hand, was based on what the NFL does. What the NFL does. We're just trying to do what the NFL does. Well, you know what the NFL does? Do you know what they do? They have tie-break rules that they can actually administer. They have tie-break rules that they can actually carry out. You like that? You like that? Get out of here. NFL teams don't play all the other teams in the NFL, so we don't either. Yeah, while at the same time, hey guys, the winner gets to change a rule the following season. Yay! Who in the NFL gets to do that? That doesn't even make sense. And is hypocritical, at the very least. Yeah. Your desire to mimic the NFL. If you're going to reflect the NFL system, as he was told they were trying to do, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, nod, nod, elbow in the ribs, then how about setting up rules that actually fit how your league is set up and not how the NFL is set up, so that your rules actually work. The NFL rules are set up to fit how their league works. Your rules, in an effort to mimic the NFL when it's convenient for you, doesn't quite work sometimes. So how about, in the name of having a league that can run smoothly and actually taking care of situations that you can take care of and prevent crazy things from happening. You can't prevent someone deciding to just bail out, that sort of thing. You can't prevent what human nature is going to drop in your lap, but you can certainly prevent, in the nicest of ways, I'll say, you can prevent hiccups that may happen. But in this case, there really isn't an excuse. You want to reflect the NFL system? They have rules that work in their league. Then let's be honorable. Let's mimic the NFL. Then how about having some rules that actually work with the way your league is set up? And I asked him, I said, what do the members of your league want the most? What do they want the most? Divisions? Or the ability to apply a beloved tiebreaker? Oh, tiebreaker, I love you. I think about you all the time. I don't know what to do. When you're away from me, my heart just so broken. And then when I see you, tiebreaker, I'm so full of love. I'm never going to give you up. What the hell? I asked him, what do the members of your league want the most? Divisions or the ability to apply a beloved tiebreaker no matter the cost? No matter the cost. So you have it set up where teams aren't going to play each other, where teams might not play each other, but you want to apply as your tiebreaker head-to-head? That is daft. And the solution was sitting right there in their laps. Deciding to drop the head-to-head as a tiebreaker today would not affect the scoring in any way. They could come up with a series of tiebreakers that fits their league, and they could be done with it. But no. This guy ran into a brick wall. It was interesting. And this is where, well, I was going to say two things at the same time, which I can't. So let me say this is why I have this show. Not so I can say, hey, do this. This is what I say. And you don't like it, leave America. That's not why I'm here. But I'm here to offer a different perspective. I'm here to help new commissioners try and navigate their ways through, stuff like this. And it was actually refreshing that I got a letter from a player as opposed to a commissioner, which was nice. And I'm not going to comment on the commissioner because I don't know where his head is at, and as much to say that the way they have it set up, it doesn't work if they want to have the head-to-head to be the tiebreaker. That's it. That's just the fact. And I got the idea that not everyone was willing to participate in the discussion or the dialogue. So this guy was kind of like left hanging out to dry on his own, and that's a hard boat, car, truck to tow. I get that. So I said that, they could address, they could address and they could vote on dropping the division setup, next year, since they're so in love. I'm so in love with you head to head. And actually, the writer, he was honest. He said, well, I don't really like total points. I like head to head. But he was just concerned because he didn't want to have to go through this stuff all over again. And that's a valid argument. And he was basically shot down. And that's not cool. And that's what kind of gives commissioners a bad name. You give commissioners a bad name. That's why I started this, because I was man, I hate being a commissioner. Everybody hates me. I was fine until I started being a commissioner. No one would talk to me. And blah, 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 blah. Yeah, so let's try and fix things. Let's try and do the right thing. But not this year. This year, they could have just picked a new tiebreaker, drop head-to-head, keep their glorious divisions. Right? Next year, vote. Do we keep a division set up so we can have our beloved head-to-head tiebreaker? We all can play each other so we can really have a real situation where we can apply head-to-head. Oh, yeah, I forgot. In the name of mimicking the NFL. Oh, I'm sorry. Because in this league, that can't happen unless the person who wins the league decides to change the rule. Oh, yeah, in the name of mimicking the NFL. Yeah. I would be annoyed if I put in the time, and I told him this. I said this in the message. I was like, man, I would be annoyed if I put in the time to manage a roster all season and we had to do this dance all over again. I'd leave. Life is short. Life is too short. And you know, if your life doesn't depend on it, and your family doesn't depend on it, and your health doesn't depend on it, and you have to deal with, you know, hoop jumping and stuff like this because for whatever reason, like I said, I'm not even going to delve into the area of trying to get into the head of the commissioner. I'm not going to do that because I don't feel I have enough information. But, you know, but just what he ran into, and I'm reacting to the responses that he got. Let's put it that way. Which one response was actually from the commissioner, which, you know, I thought was smug too. It was smug, but I'll leave it at that, you know. And, you know, the one dude, why don't you just win one more game? Oh, yeah. Oh, you mean like in the NFL? So, you know, so next week, so the Rams, they could have just decided, hey, we didn't like getting our asses beat by San Francisco. We want a win instead. And then the NFL goes, okay, because it's all in the name of fun. No, that's not what happens. It's ridiculous. Anyways, something to think about, folks. Make all the rules you want, crazy or otherwise. Just make sure your platform can support and that you can actually apply the rules. Otherwise, you're just wasting people's time. Thanks for listening, folks. Follow me on Twitter @CommisShow. Send me an email at thecommissshow@outlook.com. This is the Fantasy Commissioner Show. You have a good weekend. I am Reginald James, the Commish. Until next time. See ya.